Welcome to another episode of The Corner Booth, the official podcast of restaurantowner.com. Today, the restaurant industry is changing faster than ever. Learn from successful independent restaurant operators and other industry leaders as they share best practices that will help you engage your team, delight your guests, and grow your business.
And welcome everyone to another Corner Booth. I'm Chris Tripoli with restaurantowner.com. This Corner Booth podcast is sponsored by ServSafe. A strong food safety culture doesn't just come from a manual. It comes from how leadership shows up every day. If managers treat it like a checkbox, then the team will too. But when it's taken seriously at the top, that mindset spreads fast. The updated ServSafe Manager training leans into that with real structure, procedures, training, and actually monitoring what's happening. It's a solid way to build consistency across your team. You can learn more at servsafe.com, and restaurantowner.com members can save 15% on ServSafe training. Today, we're going to be talking about the excitement of concept creation. We're going to be talking a lot about multiple concepts, how you understand target markets, how you create success when your standards are tremendously high and volume expectancies are incredibly high, and then how you can balance this when you're going coast to coast. And that's because we have for you two friends who went to business together back in I think it was 2005 or 2008. You guys are going to clarify that. They started an incredible company called h.wood. h.wood is a development, it's a marketing, it's a brand management, hospitality-based company in Los Angeles. Some of you may not know that name, but you probably know Delilah. You know Nice Guy. You know Slab. You probably know, Bootsy Bellows. Harriet's I've seen in Nashville. So trust me, whether you're in Miami or Vegas or Nashville or California or Dallas or somewhere, you might be seeing one of their exciting brands. I bring you John Terzian and Brian Toll. John, Brian from h.wood, thank you so much. Welcome to Corner Booth.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. I know we've got so much to talk about because there's interesting concepts that seem to really hit the mark. So the process of developing, the process operating is something that we're really going to want you to walk us through, if you don't mind. But before we do that, maybe each of you could just take a minute or two and talk about yourselves, what drew you to the business, how you got started in this crazy business, who your early influences were. Listeners seem to enjoy knowing just a little bit about you guys.
Sure. Yeah. I think hospitality just comes very naturally to me. You know, I remember anytime my family had, whether it was Thanksgiving or a holiday and a bunch of people over, I remember going to my grandparents' house at a young age and just helping set up tables and set up things. It just always, like the art of throwing an event and the puzzles. And my grandma would have 40 people at Thanksgiving and worry about name tags and plates and all this. I don't know. For some reason, I enjoyed that time. So that sort of came naturally. And then I think in high school, it really started just throwing parties. And it wasn't to make money. It was just for fun. Loved the idea of getting people together. Loved controlling the list and inviting people and deciding who should come, and did it with a few friends. My high school, I guess wasn't that much going on. I wasn't friends with that many people outside of, I played baseball. So all my friends were on the baseball team essentially, but I had a bunch of friends outside of my high school from either Little League or camp or whatever it may be. And I remember enjoying going to parties from other schools and inviting people to those. And so it just started as simple as that. And then John and I were at USC together. We graduated in 2002, but even in college, both of us enjoyed throwing parties. John was like a social chair at his fraternity. We were doing it for fun even back then. I was inviting people to parties at USC. I think it was John. I remember some friends were throwing a party at Margarita Jones, and I remember getting, which was like a terrible bar at USC. Doesn't even exist anymore. It's like a condo building. But I loved inviting people to that. I would invite people to the nightclubs here in Hollywood because I was not in a fraternity in college. John's told me I'm not allowed to use the word frat, so I say fraternity now.
No actual fraternity person says frat, so I've titled that for him.
Good point.
So now I've learned it's fraternity. So I wasn't in one of those. So my options for going out on the weekend when everyone had their fraternity and sorority things was to go to the clubs in Hollywood. And I loved the music. I loved the venues. I loved being there. And I would invite a couple of people, a couple of girls or whatever to make sure I got in. And then it was bigger groups and met promoters and eventually got some drink tickets, which was life changing.
Oh boy.
Yeah, oh yeah. And then decided to start promoting. And all of this was for fun. I just, they say do what you love. And there was something that it really connected with me with lists and inviting people and the coordinating. After college, I worked at a talent agency for a minute. That really wasn't for me. Then I worked for a guy named John Gable, who had a big events company, and I did corporate branding and corporate events and nightclub promotions. And after about a year and a half or 2 years, I realized I could do that on my own. So I started my own promotions company. It was one of the biggest in LA at the time. I had different nights at different clubs. I probably had 5 or 6 nights a week going where I would just meet these club owners and say, I want a percentage of the bar. I'll make sure your club is filled. And they were happy. They didn't have to do any work. And it doesn't really exist like that anymore. But I did that. I worked with a bunch of brands. And about 2005 or 6, I mean, John can give you his backstory, but he came to me with DJ AM and said, we should open a place together. And after, 30 places open together, here we are.
Wow. So that's it though. And and I love the way you pointed that out. So because people do get into the industry early on. Many people get into the industry while they're thinking that they're going to be studying in college for their real job. And then they find out that I'm following my passion. So I am in my right spot. But you lead from something that you loved doing. That's what I got out of that. And that is, I think, the point to be made. People in this business know it's the right business for them if they got into it because they really and truly liked it. So we're pleased, that you enjoyed all the entertaining and the promoting and the inviting, and that's how you got into the business. What about you, John?
I look a lot of similarities to what Brian was saying, but I will say one. I think mine stems from some aspects of how I grew up. I grew up in a really really large Armenian family. I have like 100 cousins and older brother, and my mom was always the center of not only the family, but all of my friends. I think all of my best friends from high school would refer to her as mom. My house was always the central hangout place. And I think without knowing it, I kind of always became like kind of a glue figure, if you will, for different groups of friends and people. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had a background and I got into college both on art, like fine art, and I was also an athlete. I'm now very washed up, but I was a football player. And when I laid my eyes on USC, I was like, I'm not going anywhere else. And I walked onto the football team. And as Brian said, I was in a fraternity. I was on the football team. I had a whole group of friends from high school, and I kind of fell into throwing parties, hosting people. I was heavily part of, helping the team host players that were incoming for recruiting. And I think all of that was just naturally, subconsciously, truly leading to, I don't think I knew that what we're doing now didn't really exist. I credit some people that paved the way, the Ian Schrager and Randy Gerbers of the world, because I knew of what they were doing, but I didn't ever form what I wanted to do. And then I went to law school. It was one request from my family of lawyers and teachers was that. And I kept some aspects of promoting. And when I got out, I was fortunate enough to, I didn't pass the bar, which was to this day painful for me. I never wanted to be a lawyer, but you never want to have that. I don't know. I'm a competitive person, so it wasn't fun, but it kind of drove me. And I was grabbed by my friend was becoming a pretty big DJ, and his friend was his manager, this guy LV and DJ AM. So DJ AM was kind of the first celebrity DJ. Grabbed me and said, just be everything to me, assistant, help manage, help be ideas, like everything. And that's what I did. And one of the things we did early on, so I really traveled the world with him. I saw every nightclub and event in the world. A lot of the relationships in music from then grew. And to this day, I thank to that era. It's kind of when I started working with Brian, even though we knew each other, but we opened this club called LAX. And that process really, I realized it's meant to be that I kind of do my own thing, open my own place, and that's all of that years of culmination was where it was like, hey, gonna go raise my own money, figure it out, and go open. Had this idea to be kind of like the better version of what was going on in nightclubs and nightlife. That's how it all started, and this was 2005 when I started ideating on this. 2000 and
Mhm.
2006 is really when we really got going, and I think we opened our first place together, or first place in 2007, right, Brian?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and that technically was named Stork, the Stork, which was an homage to the old Stork Club in the 20s in New York. I think it was a little ahead of its time for what we were doing, but that's how this all started.
That's interesting. So we've got athletic past, we've played some football, we've done some baseball, we studied law school.
Yeah.
I love the fact that the influence, yours, John, really came from the music side.
Yeah.
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 Being just immersed in the music side of nightlife and the travel might really have served you well on the creative side of things. Okay, so now we jumped in. We jumped in with both feet. It's what, 20 years ago, and you did your first thing or two together. How did you develop, the process of idea and then that long road it takes from idea to reality? I know there's some listeners today that are somewhere on that road of getting something started and tripping over all the things of trying to create a vision into a concept and then getting the concept into a place, getting it funded, designed, operated, etc. How do you split up the duties? How did it get done for you?
I think like any startup, but it was the two of us, right? We had a third partner for a moment, but I think we all did everything. The interesting part is, like, I think we both just loved and had a passion for hospitality, but we at no point, and this was, look, we were 25, 26 years old, so we also didn't know any better, but at no point did we say, let's build a global hospitality company, right? That we didn't have these lofty goals. It was just like, hey, let's open a nightclub together. And that was successful. And so we opened another and another. And at some point we said, let's form a group and let's open restaurants and let's take this to the next level. But I think our initial goals were manageable, right? And so the first was just, let's open a nightclub. And so at that point, both of us sort of did everything. We
Mhm.
invited people, we helped operate the place, we were there every night, we made sure we were customer relations and made sure guests were happy. We were out there meeting with brands and event planners, trying to bring in events. And so I think we just, like I said, both just loved that aspect. We still do all of that to this day. So we just did a big Super Bowl party in San Francisco. It's fun to do those because we get to actually reach out to people we haven't spoken to in a while and say, we're doing this big event, we'd love to have you. Or an opening like in Dallas, same thing. So it's hard to do that on an ongoing basis, but it's nice on an opening or a big event. But I think now, as the years have gone on, we've sort of established who does what. And I think naturally we're very different people. We're sort of a yin and a yang. John is very much the creative, designs the places, comes up with a lot of what the concepts are and the backstory to them, and does a lot of like the marketing and the press. I'm much more of like day to day running the business, the operations, the making sure we actually make a profit, the HR side of things, the legal side of things. Like I all contracts, management deals, raising, like once the money's raised, all the dealing with like the investors and the paperwork and all that. That's all my side of it. So, and then I would say we're both at our events. We're in the venues. We still are. That's a big focus for both of us, is really hosting.
Makes sense.
I think my only thing to touch on that is, yeah, it's definitely. I don't think we set out to be this way, but I will say I do. I would say, I'm sure there's camp examples of others. I would think it's really important for founders to have truly complementary skills and positions. I don't know how one would do it if we were the same like skill set. It would be impossible. And I'm sure that's why a lot lead to breakups. That's why we've probably, at the very end of the day, Brian and I might fight about 200 things a week, but at the end of the day, we have a very core understanding of where the overall vision of the company
Mhm.
is really important. And then I think more important, the underlying like ethos and who we are as people, I think is really, really important. So I think that since we have that those same morals and ethics and I think all of that leads to a long, prosperous thing because you're gonna fight and you're gonna have disagreements, and that's just there's no other way around it. You can't. I don't think you can be a great company if you don't have that.
I think those are great points. I hope people made note of that because, yes, too many people get into the business and they might have a really good idea and they might have a really good location.
Sure.
And they're leaning on each other because they're really good friends. And so from a distance, you think this is going to be wonderful. But then when you meet them, you can see that they're strong in the same areas. They're very similar. They both want to drive, I don't know, let's say the culinary, and neither one of them is really, the other side of the fence. And that could be painful. That's like two square pegs.
Right.
So it's kind of nice that the way you frame that is that you really do have to be complementary from the start, or it's not going to be much fun.
Yeah. I think we also have the same vision for the kinds of places we like and also like where this company should go. I think it would be tough if John said, let's open a luxury, whatever, hotel. And I said, no, let's go do a putting green with the sports bar, right? I think we're aligned in that we love to travel. We love luxury. We like the lane that we play in. I think that's really helped. And so our vision for what kinds of places work, we may argue about should we do Miami next or New York next or the little things, but I think we're generally aligned in, I guess, the types of restaurants and the types of hotels and the types of places we like, which I think helps. And otherwise, we'd be butting heads all day as well. Because at this point, the sky's sort of the limit, and landlords and developers are calling us constantly, with spaces. And I think if you aren't careful, you can just start signing deals and take the wrong deal, which ultimately can lead to your downfall.
And let's share that with the listeners that you have a vision. You have expectations that are high. You obviously have objectives that you want to meet. I think you use the framework of the lane that you want to play in. So maybe you could describe that. What is the niche that you excel in? Why did you decide that? And and how has that been working for you?
John, do you want to take that one?
Okay.
I think we sort of fell into this lane, to be honest. We grew up in LA. We had, on the right part of town, we got lucky. Our friends came from wealthy families, and I think we went to USC with similar demographics. And so when it was time to throw parties or build places, we naturally sort of went to what we knew, which was sort of like the luxury, cool crowd type of places, right? That's all we knew. That's what we grew up with. Those are the places we enjoyed going to. I mean, we still do build places for sort of our core network of people. They've been, we have friends that still come to our places that we went to high school with that I honestly have some from like Little League from growing up or sports growing up or like long time friends that we have kids that are the same age now. It's funny looking back, but I think that's the crowd that we know, and that's therefore the crowd that we have gone after. It was the easiest way when we were starting to build places that they would want to go to. And they've invited their friends, and those friends have invited their friends. And so our networks have grown exponentially over the years. But I still think we have like this core group that we run ideas off of. We pitch different things to that have been really instrumental in shaping this. So I think the best advice I would say is go with what you know.
Yeah. So, and that drove you to high quality,
That's right.
fine, balanced experience type of hospitality venues. Maybe you guys could take a couple minutes and talk about some of them. You've got at least 5 or 6 different brands out there that I'm aware of, and how you decided which ones were first, what that target audience was. Maybe you could give us some examples of how it's been working for you.
You mean how we started with different brands, or what's the question?
Yeah, exactly. The different brands that followed your philosophy of getting into that luxury market, high quality, and then you ran with it.
There's a couple of things that I think are really important, and looking back on it, it was not fun at the time, but I will say there's a couple of things that led to this. One, we experienced, and by the way, we still do, but we experienced a tremendous amount of failure early on. I think pivotal things that we learned from that is probably what led to like what became what we're doing with h.wood Group now, in this luxury lane and predominantly in food and a little bit of the social nightlife aspect of food as well. I think we learned a lot. I think we also, as Brian was saying, the two important statements. One, you do what you love. I know it's a cliche statement, but like we truly we're really just doing what we naturally would be doing. Like I would be doing this for free. Like that's my thing, is like I love people, and I love putting people together, and I love designing and art and the look of things and people. And so all of that combined together is really what we're doing. We're creating spaces, right? I think what we did is we noticed and actually paid attention of what was missing from the landscape of the city we knew so well. And starting with LA. So we started hyper local in a city we were born and raised in. And, we're both patrons and fans. And as Brian was saying earlier, our friends were the same way. And so I think we just noticed what should be going on and filled that void. And each time we did that, we had successes. It's a really important note that I think that we have learned along the way. So when we are deciding different concepts and stuff, it comes down to, we're like, okay, well, we noticed this is working. This version is working in London, or this thing is working in New York. Why don't we do our version, because we're missing X, Y, and Z here, or yeah, we've noticed a rise in this. These are people are gravitating to this. We should incorporate that with this concept here, or if there's not a reason for us, if there isn't that niche to fill, we're probably at this stage, we're smart enough to not do it now and just say there's not that need, and that's how we built. So as an example, we started with nightlife, and I think I'll start with Nice Guy. What we noticed was that we got really well known for the nightclubs, because we had three big hits between Shore Bar, which was a little bar that we had, Bootsy Bellows, which was our first nightclub essentially about 13 years ago. I think we had that with David Arquette, massive hit. I think that really put us on the first map. And then we had another nightclub right after it at the same time called Hooray Henry's. And we really cornered the LA market with that. And we noticed that a lot of our friends and big loyal guests were becoming pretty big celebrities. Paparazzi was what was out there pretty big, and they wanted more private aspects. And we also noticed our close friends were also doing things like, instead of going out at clubs as much, they were going to dinner and hanging at a place like Chateau Marmont or Sunset Tower, or things that was not necessarily nightclub level. And so what we did, we said we should our love is people and providing that atmosphere. Why don't we provide more of a restaurant vibe and make it private? Use our skill set with music and nightclubs. And so we came up with the Nice Guy concept based around a notch above a restaurant, a boring restaurant, and a couple notches below a nightclub. And so it's not a big DJ, it's not big place, it's not dancing necessarily, but we have a live singer, we have great foods, we have an intimate setting. And then we did a couple of things that no one had really done before in LA, was no photographs were allowed, so everything private inside. And the only way to get a reservation for the opening and for a long time, and to this day we have a aspect of it, but you have to be on our Rolodex, like our personal list to get a reservation or a referral. And so we I have to say Nice Guy was a massive hit, and I think there's a lot of great supporters that I credit, but I think us noticing that need in the market and filling it. And each time we've done that, it's been successful. Knock on wood.
And Rolodex is a program that is, I mean, it's alive and well and big today, isn't it?
Well, we turned the Rolodex name, which started as that to get a reservation at Nice Guy or Delilah, you had to be on our Rolodex, we called it, right? So that old school term. Then we turned it into an actual aspect where you can join as a member the h.wood Rolodex. And that has become a great thing, yes.
So, as a membership program, how does yours speak to the clientele that you're serving? Because I mean, there's membership programs pretty much at every level of hospitality. So the ideas, I guess the programs or things that they might get invited to or things they might receive are what?
So I think the biggest thing to us was having everyone feel like they were part of our community. And I
Yeah.
think that's really what made us special as operators were, you know, personally inviting people to places, personally texting, if somebody wanted a it's funny, even to this day, the amount of texts, every time someone wants a reservation, it's sorry to bother you, but can I get a reservation at Delilah in Dallas or Vegas or Miami? And I always say, you're not bothering me. The day that someone stops texting us for reservations, we have a big problem. Right. And so I think it's a blessing that people reach out and text us directly. And John and I, over 20 years, have really tried hard to not say, hey, Chris, don't text me anymore. From now on, just text this person or call that person. But as you can imagine, after 20 years of starting, let's say, with you, and then you say, wait, this is my friend Bob, he needs a reservation. And Bob introduces us to Jim. And all of a sudden, we're helping people who are like 10 degrees outside of our initial friend. And so it's hard to really make everyone feel like a sense that they're part of the community, but we've done our part with it. As we grow and scale and expand, we felt like a better way to do it would be to say, let's create the Rolodex program, which is our version of a membership club. We didn't want to discount what we do. A lot of venues say, if you come in 5 times, you get a free this, or we wanted to do the opposite. So you actually have to pay to be part of our Rolodex. It's nominal. I forget what it is. Call it $1,500 a year. And for that, you get one person you can text, call, email for reservations. So you have like a point person. So you never have to worry about your reservation at Delilah, Dallas, or Miami. You also get invited to things like our Super Bowl party or our opening or our Coachella party, our F1 Vegas party. So you get access to special events. And then we do a bunch of Rolodex member only events. That could be a wine tasting. That could be, before we change our menu at Delilah, which we change all the restaurants kind of seasonally, come in for a tasting. It's on us, and you get to try all the new menu items before they're out. We may have a tequila company come out and do a tequila flight, and everyone can taste this new tequila. We do a bunch of different things. We've had guest speakers, but we're really trying to grow it to where people feel like they're getting their money's worth, that we're not just charging you for a reservation. So we have a whole team that tries to come up with really great events for these members and to make them feel and be part of our community. So we have about 250 members right now.
That's fantastic. Yes. And I'm so glad you walked us through that, because you're right. Mostly in our industry, if somebody says there's a membership program or a club you can join, that's what they're thinking. Does this mean I'm going to get a discount? Does this mean I get a freebie? Right. But instead, in keeping with the lane that you're in, you're trying to give them additional value and additional inclusion and things. Just the opposite of the discount. I have to wonder, now that we mentioned the really cool events and you talked about the Super Bowl party that you had recently, I just wonder if, because of where you're based, how much wilder that party would have been if the Rams did get past Seattle and would have been in the Super Bowl.
It's a good point. It was kind of 2 boring teams with no superstars and a terrible game. But actually, San Francisco was busy. A lot of people went up there. There were some great brands that activated. I think next year in LA, doesn't matter who the teams will be. I think there will be more excitement for the Super Bowl. LA is just a much bigger market. Brands are already starting to plan what they're going to do a year from now. So I'm excited for next year.
And talking about brands, and you guys have more than a few, how do you decide the expansion? Delilah's obviously an expandable brand. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what it is and how it went from LA, Vegas, Miami, Dallas. I don't know where else, but you've got a bunch of them. And yet some things, I guess, that maybe you create don't get in the lane for expansion to a half a dozen places?
Yeah, I mean, look, there at the end of the day, I will tell you this. There is not some actual science. No one knows. You got to get a little bit of luck, a little bit of gut, have some experience. I think in this case, we made such a mark on the city in LA with Delilah LA that we started to notice there's a lot of cities that have this same need for this supper club, this old, homage to the true supper club, which is, restaurant first, dining first,
Mhm.
with great entertainment. So dancers, live music, and that feeling of escapism. That's what I refer to Delilah as. You step in those doors at any Delilah, you truly have some sort of escapism feel. And if you don't feel that, we haven't done our job. But for the most part, whether people like it, dislike it, I pretty much across the board at least get that great review of like they feel they've been kind of transported and they're in a experience. So what we did notice is when early on when we were able to do this deal with Wynn Las Vegas, I think a game-changing career thing for us. Wynn is the pinnacle of hospitality, especially in Vegas and the casinos. We were their first outside group to be brought in essentially and to create this. And we created a really special, to this day, the top restaurant on the strip. And I think we noticed that we could do it there, that there's a handful of cities that have this need. And so we look for cities that, because Delilah's a big lift. You have to have, the dancers and it's a really going out experience. So we look for cities that have, a lot of active, so sports, professional sports teams, active events that are, oftentimes global, a buzzing, restaurant and bar scene and kind of all walks of life because it's you need that population of people for this. So we've targeted those cities that we open. So we're in Miami, Dallas, we're opening in New York. We have to target those cities, and that doesn't mean we're not going to roll out other concepts of ours. So we are going to do that with Nice Guy as well. But Delilah was our first, and it was really the one that made the mark and had that kind of global reach early.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's a throwback to when dinner first, but showroom entertainment was popular.
Yeah.
To an oldie in hospitality like me, it's a throwback to like my first job. I mean, I just thought all restaurants were like that. When I was a kid, I was a busboy at a place that was a high-end restaurant, but it had this showroom lounge.
Right.
And it was in Phoenix, Arizona, which just happened to be on sort of an entertainment circle with a lot of Vegas, not the big name, but more of the lounge guys. And so we had this cycle of entertainment, and there would be singing from piano bars to big bands, from jazz to dancers. I just thought every restaurant was like that, but that's just me as a busboy as a teenager. Then I realized that no. Showrooms were really kind of special.
Yeah.
And, so yeah, it's a great niche that you're in now. I imagine something has really, really changed too from the early days of putting your idea together, which we talked about, to then making it a reality through financing. Once you're a little more established, high volume, quality operators like you are now, it may be a little bit different or easier to put deals together, get interested landlords, and raise funds. Am I just assuming that that's bigger, an easier ball game than it was than when you were doing your first few? And how the heck did you do your first few?
Yes and no. It's interesting. The first place was like a $2 million build out.
Yeah.
And at the time we had no fear. We went to friends, we went to family, we went to our parents, we put in our own money. We raised it. It was like 20, 25 people that put in money there. And we were just so confident that it was going to work. It never crossed our mind that it wouldn't. And so people gave us money. They were like, wow, you guys are amazing. And we had a track record of throwing some of the best parties around town and concerts. So they knew us from that, but we had no track record as operators. So we got it done, and then it didn't make money. It actually lost every penny. But I think John said earlier, we learned some really good lessons. I think you learn more in the losses than in the successes.
I think
So,
would agree. Yes.
and so we learned we knew how to fill a room. I don't think we knew how to capitalize on those customers. So it was much harder for venue number 2, but we got it done. And venue number 3, when we sort of got the hang of it on both how to raise money from people and how to operate and how to make them their money back. And so we were in a really good place, as John said earlier, with Shore Bar and Bootsy Bellows and Henry's at the time. This is 2012 and 13. And then we wanted to open a restaurant. Very hard to find money. Everyone said, you guys are nightclub guys. Restaurants are different. You have no track record. They're much harder, and we don't want to invest. And so everyone basically said, if you give us part of Bootsy Bellows and Ray Henry's, which were very successful, we'll invest in the restaurant. And our investors at those places didn't want to do it. And they also didn't want to do the restaurant. So we were sort of stuck. So 2014, we actually got introduced to Hakkasan Group, who bought out all of our old investors and gave us the money for growth. So it really took a lot of work and energy to get that done. And we were in a good place for about a year, and then Hakkasan went insolvent. They were getting investigated by the Department of Justice. So soon after they paid for the nice guy, they had no more money to play. So we ended up having to raise again and buy them out. And it's been a long history of investor and buy them out and new investor and buy them out. So I think we're pretty good at raising money at this point, but the concepts are so much more expensive. The nice guy, for context, was like $500,000 to build. It was a Mediterranean restaurant. We gave it a facelift. It was a pretty simple build out. And so it was pretty easy to get Hakkasan to put the money in. For context, Delilah in Dallas was about 12 million. Delilah in Miami was about 14 million. Third Streets Club here in LA was about 15 million. So we're talking big numbers. So it's much more challenging to run around and raise 100,000 here, 200,000 here. It would just take forever. So I would say we're better at raising, but it's also more challenging, and there's less people who want to do it, because when you're asking for that kind of money, it's not, I just want to own part of a restaurant. It's a different type of investor. And so we actually bought out all of our old investors and raised money about a year ago from a new hospitality fund out of the Middle East, because it just became too challenging to both operate the business and the current venues, and then also run around and take meetings to raise capital for new venues. And so it just, we had to just do it all with one swoop to make our lives easier.
Wow. And what a story. And yes, you're right. And some people, I think, can identify that with that better than others. Certainly the starting out where you've got high expectations and unbelievable belief, but must have friends, family, personal investment. There just isn't standard financing like that.
Yeah.
But you're in a situation now, with that type of investment funding, and that is in a different league. And that type of investment is needed, obviously, for the size and the detail of the restaurant, showrooms, concepts you do.
Yeah.
And most people are not in that niche there. However, I think they listened and they're nodding their head, because whether it is the $15 million investment or the $3 to $4 million investment, they can identify with the time it takes and the problems, that are out there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for every 10 or 20 people we would meet with, you'd have to go to lunch, dinner, drinks, tour the venue. For all 1 out of 10 or 20 would actually commit to wiring the money. So it's fundraising is not fun. I think some people enjoy it and enjoy the hunt of it. It's something that I think is a necessity in the industry, but I certainly don't enjoy that. I like the operating of the actual business, but yeah, I can say it doesn't really get easier. There are different kinds of problems as you grow more, but even to open your first restaurant, if that's $1 million or $2 million, when you have no track record, certainly not easy. My advice would be build a great business plan, make sure you have, speak to the right people and the right, I guess, people in the industry who can give you advice. I think for any product is helpful. I wish when we were younger, we had really taken the time to bring in an expert on operations, right? We were just so confident that we knew how to fill the venue. We didn't take the time to realize there's a whole separate side of it, how to extract revenue and profits out of this. And so I think getting advice early from the right people can save you a lot of headaches in the long run. And a lot of people don't want to pay for it, or they don't want to bring in that kind of partner, and so that you skip that step, and it's crucial.
Good advice. Good advice. Well, shifting from finance, what are the industry challenges that you are facing now? Many people are concerned with high cost of entry. However, we're hearing a lot of people that aren't expanding or aren't opening are just concerned right now with the challenges of operation, the finding of people, the increasing costs of product. Are you facing that too, or because you're a little more established, is it a little bit easier for you to handle?
We're definitely facing it. I think LA is really the only city either one of us have ever lived. We love the city, but it's increasingly harder and harder and harder to operate here. The minimum wage makes it really difficult. You have to provide health care, which makes it extremely expensive. It ends up being $27, $28 an hour minimum wage when you factor in healthcare, whereas you can open in Florida and there's a tip credit. And so for that same bartender who here we have to pay, let's round it up to 30 for even numbers. So if they work a 6-hour shift, it's $180 and we probably have 40, 50 people on the floor on a given night. So
Sure.
that's big math just for labor. Go to Florida, there's a tip credit. As long as they make, I forget the exact number, call it $12 an hour in tips, you don't have to provide a minimum wage on top of it. And so that can save a restaurant a tremendous amount of money over a night, a week, a year. And so the margins are just getting slimmer and slimmer and slimmer here in LA, I understand why these laws get put in place, but then you look around and every restaurant is out of business, right? From West Hollywood was like the center of the universe in LA, what, 4 or 5 years ago? And now it seems like all our competitors are gone. It feels like we're one of the last men standing here. So that's been a challenge. The rents go up every year. The landlords it seems like they don't look around and notice all the restaurants out of business, just rent goes up, which makes it a huge challenge. We're finding much better deals in cities like Dallas, even New York, Miami. The rent is a fraction of the price of what it is in LA. So I think that's been a challenge here. And then the entertainment industry not filming here anymore has been a real challenge. For the longest time, the servers, the bartenders, all of our staff were writers, directors, actors, models that moved here to try and get those jobs, right? And when they weren't acting or they were trying to go out for those jobs, in the meantime, they were doing the bartending job or the server job. And so there was constantly new people coming to town who were happy to have those jobs. That's dried up. Nothing's shot here anymore. The industry is all moved to Atlanta or Toronto or wherever they're shooting. And so there really isn't like an influx of great new people that want to work in restaurants. And so it's been harder and harder to find great people, which is definitely a challenge. And then the third thing I would mention is people are drinking much less. They're all about wellness,
Yes.
getting up early, being healthy. And so the last thing they want to do is go out, get, blackout drunk at a nightclub or even a restaurant. And so and that doesn't mean people aren't drinking. I don't think it's as dramatic as some people are portraying it, but I think people have a couple less drinks, or they may choose to go out one less night, right? Because
Yes.
you'd rather wake up early, you'd rather go to the gym, you'd rather be healthy. And so those three things have really affected restaurants and here in California.
That's exactly right. No, that last point is universal. We hear that from everyone. Casual concept, high volume, club, steakhouse, regardless of where you are, everyone is noticing that it seems like, the younger brand of diner, the younger generation is just choosing to drink less. Opens up all kinds of venues for newer things, non-alcoholic drinks and, whatever, but it's just a lifestyle choice to drink a little less. Everyone's having to adjust to that too. And yeah, I would definitely second your point. I don't understand what school landlords go to that teach them that, I guess, basic area business economics don't mean anything. Every few years, you're supposed to open the rent. That's getting to be, common. And so it's a shame, but you're right. You're facing some of the same battles that most of our listeners, no matter where they are or what the concept is, are facing.
Yeah.
So, John, Brian, what's next for h.wood? Next 3 to 5 years, what's the exciting things that we might be able to see coming out of you two?
Well, I think it's funny you put it that way. We're really excited for these next 3 years. We have some exciting things both in LA and around the globe. We have a handful of new premier Delilahs opening. So we have New York one I'm really excited for. We have Delilah in Ras Al Khaimah opening, which is at the new Wynn Casino just outside of Dubai, about an hour from Dubai. That's going to be absolutely mind-blowing. We have some new concepts. The first time in a while, we're opening a new sushi concept or Asian concept. We're opening a new place in Brentwood that's kind of like, our Americana type of grill that I think I'm really excited for. And then, we're really plotting and planning to get into hotels. We really believe in ourselves for that. And we have some exciting events coming up. We're excited for the Olympics coming in LA. I think it's going to be a really good time in these next 3-4 years.
Wow. It sounds like your plate is more than full for the next 3 to 4 years. That's great.
It is. It's a good thing though.
Yes, it is. Well, thank you guys so much. We're going to have to wrap up now. Hey, everyone, you've been listening to John Terzian. You've been listening to Brian Toll. The group is called h.wood. Look them up. Exciting concepts, doing things right. This is Corner Booth. Corner Booth being brought to you by restaurantowner.com. Again, we appreciate ServSafe for supporting this episode, helping operators build safer, stronger restaurants every day. Again, thanks so much for joining us today. John, Brian, thank you so much for being our guests. Continued success. And everyone else, we hope we can cross paths on another Corner Booth real soon. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us on the Corner Booth. We'll be back next Tuesday with more inspiration, insights, and industry best practices to help you engage your team, delight your guests, and grow your business.